So I put in work, tryna make the first. Put the family first, breaking family curse. Had to go through hell and back to see heaven on earth.
Coincidence? I think not!
Hey there, YouTube. Welcome to JT Picks, and today we're going to be talking about Heaven on Earth. Heaven on Earth is a collective of CHH rappers including Not Clyde, A3, 350, Caleb Mitchell, Romar Jesse, Akleso, What Up RG, and I think that's it. I know there's also a bunch of producers like Kilowatts, Enzo Gran, and others in there like Juice Bangers. Let me give you the first half of the review where I talk about the score I initially wanted to give this project, which was a 7.5. But as time went on and I sat on a few more of the tracks, specifically Whitney, Without You, I think HOOLIES in Paris, and Notre Dame. As I continued to sit on those tracks, I was like, man, okay, this album deserves a little bit higher. So I'm giving the album an 8 out of 10. Why it gets an 8, we're gonna get into that. But before that, let's just look at the negatives of the album. There's not too many. The biggest negative is this. Even though it's 10 tracks, not a long album, it has this really weird disconnect. When you got compilation albums such as this, where it's just like there's no specific story being told or anything, which, by the way, that is fine. It's fine to just like have different sounds every track, or it's fine to have a pattern or something, but there's no pattern here. It's just like the first half is harder hip hop and the second half is more praise and worship. And when I say praise and worship, I use that term very loosely. I know praise and worship brings to mind Michael W. Smith or Phil Wickham or, you know, stuff like that. But no, I just mean like hip hop, but with lyrics that are very praise and worship focused. The first half of the album, it's very hard, very upbeat, very workout-esque, right? You'd put it on while you're working out. The second half is you'd put it on while you're working out, but it's worship. The problem for me is that you have these two sides and there's nothing to help transition you to the second half. So you would think maybe track 5, right, which should be the end of the harder sounding tracks. It might be a mix of both. It's not. It's Whitney. Whitney's supposed to be a harder workout hip-hop song. And then the next one, I believe, is Can't Decide. It's just such a jarring kind of change. I look for these types of things when listening to albums. If it's not a story album, yes, I tend to focus more on sound, which is why this is a very small nitpick. But still, it is a nitpick and does drive me away from listening to the entirety of the album, knowing that there is just such a disconnect here. Literally, all you had to do was put a 10-second interlude, and that would have majorly, I'm telling you, it would have majorly helped. Maybe a 10-second interlude of somebody saying, okay, let's slow it down a little bit. Maybe somebody saying, okay, it's time to bring that praise and worship in. Maybe even do another song that's just obviously a mix of both, like do the first half of the song be like super hard, and then a beat switch that morphs into this more low-key hip-hop that has praise and worship lyrics into it, and it would have been a really clever kind of transition, but it wasn't there. And so yeah, it, like I said, nitpick. The only other problem, which once again very minor problem, is the member which I feel did the least best. I don't want to say worst, because no member of this group necessarily did bad. I just think this was the member who was the most, I don't know if disappointing is the right word, but I'm gonna use it. Disappointing. I have high standards for him, so when I heard his verses and stuff, on some of them I was disappointed, and on some of them I was very happy with the vocals, but Caleb Mitchell. Out of everybody here, you were the obvious candidate. For just a few tracks where I was like, nah, Caleb, this ain't it, Chief. This ain't it. I think that the prime example for me would be Notre Dame. Well, not a bad verse, but he gives like the same kind of verse on Okay Please Notre Dame, and I believe Rings too. He just gave 3 verses that just sounded so similar. He was using the same cadence, and I was just like, bruh, other people on this album are giving their all. You need to be giving your all too. Speaking of which, I'm gonna mention my top 3 favorite members. Before that, I just want to say Caleb, Akleso, Romar, RG. There's nothing to feel bad if I didn't mention you guys here or at all. Y'all did a decent job. These guys, they just showed you up. In a good way though, you know, y'all got your chance to shine in the future. I'm sure Heaven on Earth is not done here. Now for the top 3, starting with number 3, I'm gonna have to give it to Not Clyde. You know, Not Clyde always gives his best, and here was no exception. I would say my favorite verse from him was on Hoolies in Paris. He did a decent job on Notre Dame, decent job on Rings, and just, you know, on the rest of it, he did okay. There was no like super, aside from Hoolies in Paris, there was no like, oh my goodness, he snapped moment. Second, I'm gonna have to go with A3. A3 kind of shocked me, to be honest. I was like, whoa, he's spitting on Hoolies in Paris? Sheesh, on Rings? Oh my goodness, he was actually killing it. But first place is gonna be, I believe it's A3's older brother, 350, which is shocking. And I say that because I did an IG review of his album Love You Divine, and one problem I had with it was just 350. To be completely honest, he sounded kind of bland on that project. It got old after like 1 track, and the best track on that album is Good Without You, which is an absolutely amazing track. I love that track. He didn't bring anything like new, but here it is the complete opposite. I mean, look, here's footage from my scoring session, and this just tells you everything you need to know. I was actually on Whitney, and just here you go. Oh my gosh, right now I'm reviewing the Heaven on Earth album, and I just have to say, 350, you are absolutely killing it. Like, every time you rap, it's a joy to hear you. Not like, I'm like, oh my gosh, he's doing so good. I'm not joking. Right now, that's like all I'm rating. Like, high marks for 350. Just, not that the other members aren't doing good, but just 350 is just another level right now. He made sure the flows he brought were fresh. It was never old. Like, most of the times he brought his A game, and if he didn't bring his A game, it was just good. You know, like, his best work was on Whitney, Notre Dame, Without You, Brand New, Can't Explain. I mean, he just did a really good job on pretty much everything he was on. I was like, he's spitting. I actually, on my review sheet here, I wrote 350 murked everything. I'm telling you, I think it was 350 that helped me realize that this is not just a 7.5 album, because I really started vibing with Whitney. That's my favorite track. And then Without You got me, and then I was like, I underrated Notre Dame.
Who that is? Open it, shoot my soul like wait. In the itch, I'm tryna walk around these thoughts. Shawty dip, she saw the ring, that's what I thought. I remember vividly, I was 15. Struggling mentally twice a day.
So like I said, I love it. Moving on from the members and their performances, I love the influences this album has, specifically the Cardi influence. I know it's really obvious on Hoolies in Paris, but you can hear it elsewhere. They're just minor Cardi influences. The person who uses the Cardi influences is mainly A3, and you can hear that in just his cadence. Finally, I would say the biggest positive of the album was the second half. While the first half was good, I do like the hook on Rings. I like Notre Dame. It's a pretty hype song. I like Hoolies in Paris, and I absolutely love Whitney. It's one of my hype songs of the year right now. But just like the second half, man. You could take out all the tracks on the second half, but there's one track on the second half that it got some recognition at first and it deserves it, and it is Without You. That track, when I first heard it, lifted me. You know how if you hear like a certain Kanye West song and you start ascending to the 30th plane of existence? That was me to Without You. Caleb's vocals. When listening to the album in my scoring session, I was actually kind of cross at Caleb. I was like, dude, you kind of let me down. And then Without You played it, I'm like, oh, well, all's forgiven. Because his vocals was so heavenly. I was very happy with it. I was like, this is a high scoring song. And once Whitney really hit, even after the scoring session, because scoring doesn't stop there. I hope you know that. Yes, I get my initial opinion and my ideas on the songs stay within that realm. So like if I initially in the scoring session give a song a 7, it's gonna stay there, probably. Like it's probably gonna stay on 7, and at minimum it'll change just a bit. But even though that is the initial score, it doesn't mean that that's the final. This, once again, this album's score is an example of that. I gave it a 7.5. I thought it was going to be a 7.5. It was actually a 7.78. And I brought it down to a 7.5. I didn't think it deserved to be an 8. Anything else, just round up or round down. But when it's on 7.7, I'm the deciding factor. Because it's 2 points up or 2 points down. I'm stuck in the middle and I gotta make the decision. So here I made the decision to go down. And then a few days later, I'm like, Without You is really hitting. Whitney is really hitting. Oh, I got it. It's an 8. There was so much that was enjoyable about this album. I know there's specifically a few tracks that I really, really love. But tracks like Can't Explain. Good hook on Can't Explain. Good hook on Rings. Brand New was great. Rain was a great idea, just not executed as well as it could have been. The fact that the second half feels like it's something I can play at church. I serve at my church often. It's something that I could possibly, like, you know, while I'm serving, play and be worshiping God through my actions and through what I'm listening to. Like, that's a win-win. So, very enjoyable album, very good album. I give it an 8 for great. I think it just barely makes it there due to Whitney and Without You. Those two songs, although the other great ones are HOOLIES in Paris and Notre Dame, and the rest of them sit in this good to great-ish kind of area, with the worst song being, I didn't talk about it, but my least favorite song is easily Okay Please. Other than that, like I said, 8 album, great album. If you've watched all this way, thank you for watching this review. Make sure to leave a like, make sure to comment, I will respond, make sure to share, and please subscribe. As always, it's really helpful and it's free to do, although I won't force you. And remember, there's only 2 things I know. I know that Jesus is king and that JT, moi, knows best. See y'all next time.